call will be recorded and monitored. Your advance pay account balance is $68.25. For customer assistance, billing inquiries, or to block future calls, dial 1-877-650-4249. To hear the cost of this call, press 8 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline call, this call is subject to monitoring and recording. Do not use three-way or call waiting features during this call. Thank you for using Global Tel-Link.
All right, thank you, Connie, for the question. Ezekiel chapter 10, the wheel in the middle of a wheel and full of eyes round about. I have read that passage for 46 years. I have scratched my head in every possible square inch, and I cannot figure it out. Over half a dozen, maybe 20 or 30 even sermons on the topic, and everybody has strange ideas. Some people say it's UFOs, some people say beings from outer space, some people say it's angels. I absolutely cannot help you on that one, and I wish I could. I think there are probably things in heaven that are beyond our little human brain's comprehension, which is a good thing. If all of heaven and all of God and all of His Word even would fit into my little brain, He would not be worth worshiping. That's for sure. Now, you don't have to understand all about God to take advantage of His attributes, like His love and mercy and the peace He can give you even in trials and even being in prison. You don't have to understand all about a car to drive it. Get in, turn the key. You don't have to understand all the workings of the mechanics. Just it works, and you don't have to understand all the Bible or all about God to be a Christian or to take advantage of the blessings of being in God's family. So, I'm sorry. I wish I could help. If somebody's got a positive answer, I think I've heard all the theories. I would like a more positive answer, and I don't have it. Wish I did. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you, Pastor Hovind. All right. The next question, Pastor Hovind, is also from Connie Muna. And Connie Muna writes, have you heard about animal and plant life existing at the deepest part of the Earth's ocean? The Mariana Trench, Scientific American, April the 14th, 2013. There is no source of light to reach them down there, yet life exists. Why do people complain about no sun in Genesis 1 till day 4 now? Thanks for your time. I'll be trying to come up with some more questions. Sincerely, Connie Muna.
Well, thank you. Yes, I have heard about that, which is the Mariana Trench.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
37,000 feet deep, or about 7 miles deep. I don't know the exact number. I'm sure somebody would guide me on that one. It's been 8.5 years since I've seen a computer, so cut me a little slack, okay? It's about 7 miles deep off the coast of Japan, the deepest known part of the ocean. There may be one somewhere else deeper that nobody's found. I don't know. Anyway, yes, when they got down there, 1977, with the deep sea submersible, the Trieste, they discovered, wow, there's life down here. Like, well, God created unusual kinds of life, and I think it's amazing. Nothing having to do with evolution, just showing the incredible intelligence and wisdom of God. The pressure down there would be mind-boggling. You can take a cubic foot of water, which weighs about 62 pounds, take that times 10, and that's what a stack of cubes of water 10 feet high would weigh. So you'd have 620 pounds of pressure on each square foot under just 10 feet of water. Well, take 37,000 times 62, and you'll see how many pounds per square foot of pressure there is at the Mariana Trench. How life can exist down there and adjust to all that pressure, and when they try to bring it up in a cage or basket or something, it destroys it because the pressure change. We're just bringing it up to zero pressure at the surface. So they have to go real slow, or else they're going to kill it. That's a whole other story. But to answer to your question, yes, I heard of that. I think it's amazing, and to me, it just makes me want to praise God. Like, you are so smart. I can't wait to spend this eternity in heaven with you. Thank you for the question.
All right, thank you, Pastor Hovind. Here's a good question from Rick. Rick writes, hello, Pastor Hovind. Are Christians, and he puts in quotes, little gods, refer to Psalms 82:6 and John 10:34. We thank God for true men of God such as yourself, Rick.
Well, we kind of covered that a little bit before. The term gods in that case would be a small g. And you can carve a statue and call it God, or out of rock or wood or something else. So there are many things that people claim to be gods, but by definition, capital G, God, there can only be one. In my definition of God, there cannot be two or more, or he cannot share his power. If you read through the book of Isaiah, you'll see several places where God says there is nobody but him. He is it. There are no other gods. I'm the one. He says, I am that I am. If I can spot a few real quick in the book of Isaiah, I've got quite a few marked in mine. Of course, this is not my original Bible. Here, I just flipped to one, Isaiah 48:12. Hearken unto me, O Jacob and Israel, my name. I am he. I am the first. I also am the last. And when you read in Revelation chapter 1, Jesus claims he is the first and the last. Well, that's another one of scores of verses that indicate Jesus was God in the flesh. But all through Isaiah, mostly chapter 44, 45, 46, if I recall, in the 40s, there's quite a few references where God says, there is no other God but me. He said, I don't know of any. And since he knows everything and he doesn't know of any other gods, then that must be it. He's the only one. So as far as us being little gods, I think that's probably just a play on words or an expression that we are... We of course are not the God of the universe. Wouldn't want the job if it was available. Couldn't handle it if it was available. That's for sure. And it's not available. He's going to be there forever. So yeah, I think that expression is probably just a play on words. We are, and I think Jesus was quoting one of the false prophets, or one of the pagan prophets, I guess, who made that statement. Okay, hope that helps. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you, Pastor Hovind. This next question, it's more of a request, and it's kind of long. I'll read it as fast as I can. It has to do with vaccinations and comes from a man by the name of Ron. And Ron writes, Hello, Kent. I hope you found my last two emails beneficial concerning disproving Islam, binary belief, and Obama unwittingly slandering the Quran. As you may already know, the government is trying to mandate vaccinations. They even desire to deny religious convictions as a means for opting out. For a period of time, however, it appears Christians will be able to refuse forced vaccinations, although they need to state very specific reasons before the government will permit such waivers. So why am I sharing this with you? Ken, it is my opinion that you have a vast amount of biblical knowledge/wisdom, and as such, you can help to construct a mini database of biblical objections concerning forced vaccinations. Besides, those who have studied the subject ought to already know all vaccinations are contaminated and can be deadly. Due to the numerous connections you've established over the decades, won't you please begin to develop biblical objections for why Christians need not contaminate the temple of the Holy Spirit? One way to accomplish this would be to ask Christians and organizations to contemplate this topic for a period of time. This way, while reading the Bible, Christians could document key verses that directly and indirectly provide biblical objections. They should also state the reason why. In my opinion, God will supply meaningful and eye-opening comebacks so long as Christians are serious about receiving his guidance. Mandating vaccinations is really a forerunner to receiving the mark. If Christians are too busy, afraid, ashamed, preoccupied to oppose and expose forced vaccinations, then this will end up being another example of how the church unwittingly aids Godspeed to the beast system, also known as feet and toes constructed of iron mixed with clay. Please help construct biblical, legal, and common sense approach to top database of biblical objections so Christians can more effectively prevent the government from contaminating the temple of the Holy Spirit! Without prejudice. Sincerely, Ron.
Did you know that there's also aborted babies in these vaccinations?
They put aborted fetus cells in the vaccinations. I think that's what my wife is trying to say.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I can't document it, but it wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I've definitely heard of that.
That's cannibalism.
Okay, tell me about it. I know it's evil, and aborted babies is murder. I mean, what do we do? Our government's doing that. So.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
Let me answer your question in a roundabout way with a story. When I was in Boy Scouts, one of the skits, they had a father-son banquet one time, and they had all the fathers and Boy Scouts camping out, having a wonderful time. And they said, okay, we're going to have a skit. And they got two boys to volunteer, and they came up and laid on the ground, and they put a blanket over each one. And they said, okay, now take off something you don't need. And and the kids would take off one shoe and toss it out from under the blanket. Okay, take off something else you don't need, and they would take off the other shoe. Take off something else you don't need, and they would take off a sock. And, obviously, eventually they're down to their skivvies, and then the scoutmaster said, okay, do any of you have any ideas how they could have done it differently? And one kid said, oh yeah, they could have taken off a shoestring and then the shoe, that way they get 2 for 1. Or, my dad said, guys, you are missing the entire point. What's the main thing they don't need? The blanket. Take off something you don't need. Take off something you don't need. Throw off the blanket. Hello, game over. Which is the point of the story. Now, to answer your question, as far as Christians opting out of vaccines, and vaccines being containing aborted babies and all that stuff, there's a much bigger picture people don't realize. Where exactly is the jurisdiction of this government that is asking their people to do this? The referee during a basketball game has jurisdiction within that box on that court. He does not have jurisdiction outside of that court. He has jurisdiction only over the players on the court. He does not have jurisdiction over the spectators in the stand. He only has jurisdiction during game time. When the whistle blows and the game's over, his jurisdiction is over. So his authority is limited. Jesus pointed that out to Pilate. You could have no authority at all over me if it weren't given to you from God. All authority ultimately comes from God. What has happened in the last 200 years, we have been totally tricked and bamboozled into thinking we are all American citizens. But I thought I was for years. I said, of course I'm an American citizen. This is something Paul Hansen really needs to answer, or many others that are working on this very issue. The Founding Fathers started a little government in 10 miles square, Washington, D.C., and they said these people need land, obviously, to govern, and they need military bases and necessary buildings, forts, etc., and post offices. That's all perfectly legitimate. And they can make whatever rules they want for their people. The government could say everybody must wear blue socks, and you'd have to wear blue socks. The question is, do you live in Washington, D.C.? If they tell their people you have to get a vaccination, and you're one of their people living on their territory, of course you have to do what they say. Or if you've contracted in to become one of their people. This is still puzzling to me, and I'm sure not an expert, but I'm beginning to see through the fog a little bit and see, whoa, what a giant deception. What's the thing we don't need? We don't need the blanket. Throw this thing off. So if they want to mandate vaccines for their people, they can. The biggest protection you would have, in my opinion, don't be one of their people. Just ask, where did you get jurisdiction over my land? You have jurisdiction over yours. I mean, the whole country is divided up with boundaries called state boundaries and county boundaries and property boundaries, and we all have. I can make rules for my kids in my house. I cannot make rules for the neighbor kids in their house. My authority stops at my boundary, and their authority stops at their boundary. The problem is everybody thinks when they say, do you live in the United States? Well, of course I do. But now think about it. It probably was true 100 years ago, but they've changed the definitions to the point where it's so confusing. It's like the Matrix. They've created this big imaginary world, and I want to take the red pill. I want to know the truth. So when they asked me on the witness stand, are you a resident of Pensacola? I said, I don't know what that word means anymore. I thought I did at one time. I think in common usage, the word resident means, this is where I reside. This is where I stay. But in legal terms, that is not at all what it means. So it's like Alice in Wonderland. Words mean what I say they mean. They have changed the meaning of the words. So when they make a rule that all U.S. citizens or all people living in the United States must be vaccinated, listen very carefully to what they're saying. Do you live in the United States? Before you say yes, you better understand what they mean by those words. So that's something Paul would have to answer, or some others. There's plenty of stuff on the internet about that, but be very cautious. So if that rule doesn't apply to you, it doesn't matter what rules they make. So rather than panic and say, okay, here's how you can get out of it, and they probably will grant exceptions. See, they can only grant an exception.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
They can only grant an exception if they already have control. That's the difference. They grant an exemption, I mean. An exception, if the United States passes a law, you got to get vaccinated. Well, that doesn't affect the Mexicans or the Canadians or the Costa Ricans or the Cubans. They're not under that law. And exactly who does that apply to when they say United States passes a law? This is a really touchy issue and needs to be thoroughly investigated and exposed. So anyway, hope that helps on the vaccine. Thank you, brother. Are there more questions?
Yes, sir. There are more questions. We look forward to you calling back if you have the time.
Yeah. I do. It's wide open. It's perfect time in the morning.
Very good. All right. We'll look forward to you calling back, sir. All right. I'd like to just say something. Earlier in the call, I said aborted fetus cells. I don't know what caused me to use that word. I need to use the proper word, and the proper word is a baby, right? It's not a fetus, it's a baby, and I apologize for using that word. Sometimes I slip into the vocabulary of these evil demons, and my understanding is they are putting baby cells into these vaccinations. So I don't want to use that word fetus. That's like giving into the enemy.